Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update on the current situation here in Spain. Day 243 of the current situation, and there's been some changes to the entry requirements for people that are planning to come to Spain in the near future, but I'll tell you some more about that in just a moment. Firstly, a big thanks to people that left comments on the last video. Lots of comments, lots of debate happening there as usual. Thanks to people that supported the channel through a small donation. You can see your name here. Thanks to people that bought merchandise, and a big thanks to my patrons on Patreon for your continuing support. Now, as I said, the government has decided to increase the entry requirements for people that are planning to come to Spain by sea or by air. The government announced yesterday that they will require a negative PCR test for international travellers from up to 65 countries. Spain will require that international travellers from a total of 65 high-risk countries have a negative PCR test for the coronavirus 72 hours before entering the country. Some of the countries included in the list are the United States, France, or Germany. So the government there finally deciding that it's about time to make it a little bit more difficult to get into the country and demanding this PCR test. And some people argue that it should have been done months ago. What does the new regulation that requires a negative PCR test mean for travellers? Good question. Let's have a look at some answers. For example, do the controls that existed until now disappear? The answer to that is no. This measure is in addition to the health controls that are currently being carried out on all international passengers at the points of entry. Temperature checks and visual control is maintained. What documents should travellers carry with them? Well, since July the 1st, anyone travelling to Spain must fill out an online public form that is available at this website or by downloading the free application Spain Travel Health. You will also get a QR code that you must present on arrival in Spain. It is in this document where the new question regarding the PCR test will be included. How is a negative PCR test credited? At any time, the authorities may request the passenger to accredit the test result, which must have been done a maximum of 72 hours before. You must have the original version of the document written in Spanish or English, and it may be submitted on paper or in electronic format. When does the measure take effect? Although it is published today in the official State Gazette, it will take effect on November the 23rd. And finally, what will be considered a risk country? For European countries in the Schengen area, the risk map prepared by the European Centre for Disease Control, the ECDC, will be followed. For third countries, the reference will be the basic accumulated incidence rate per 100,000 inhabitants in the last 14 days. So there you go. If you're planning a trip to Spain, that is what you will need to do as of the 23rd of November. Now, the topic of masks was back in the headlines yesterday as the government has finally announced that they are going to reduce the VAT on masks. We can see here that the government will reduce the VAT on masks from 21 to 4%. The Minister of Finance, Maria Jesus Montero, assures that the change will be approved by the decree in the next Council of Ministers. Now, there's been a lot of debate in recent times about the price of masks here in Spain. Other European countries, neighbouring European countries, namely Portugal, sell masks at a lot cheaper rate than they do here in Spain. And of course, we saw a couple of weeks ago a gentleman that went to Portugal, saw the price of masks there and decided to tweet about it. And of course, that tweet went viral. Since then, there's been a lot of pressure on the government to reduce the price of masks. Their main argument was that the European Union didn't allow them to lower the VAT on masks. However, that seems to be a lie, and the opposition parties are accusing the government of ripping off the Spanish population for the last 6 months. And we can see here that it has been confirmed by Brussels. It warned in May that the VAT on masks could be lowered without penalty. So there we go, just another example of what a deceitful government we have in this country at the moment. Now let's have a look at the health situation in the country by looking at the map of Spain and various autonomous communities. Starting here with Spain as a whole, we can see that the risk level around the country is extreme. The total amount of cases there, diagnosed cases in the last 24 hours, the accumulated incidence rate in the last 14 days sits at 514.25. The total amount of deceased in the country has topped the 40,000 mark and now sits at 40,105. Deaths in the last 7 days, 1,241. Hospital pressure now, we can see that there are currently 21,051 patients in hospital with COVID, and there are 3,093 patients in ICUs. Looking now at the Madrid community, the risk level is also extreme. The total amount of cases there, new cases in the last 24 hours, accumulated incidence rate in Madrid sits at 333.23, deaths in the last 7 days 43, and there are currently 2,788 COVID patients in hospital, and there are currently 445 COVID patients in ICUs in Madrid, which is 35.01% of all ICU units. The Valencian community now, the risk level there is also extreme. The total amount of cases, the accumulated incidence rate in the last 14 days, 282.73. There have been 76 deaths in the last 7 days, and we can see that there are presently 1,784 COVID patients hospitalized and 276 COVID patients in ICUs. And finally here, the Canary Islands, we can see that the risk there is medium. The accumulated incidence rate in the last 14 days sits at 82.57. There have been 11 deaths in the last 7 days, 240 patients currently in hospital with COVID in the Canary Islands, and there are 48 COVID patients in ICUs. Now, if we have a look now at the COVID traffic light system here in Spain, we can see that there are currently 15 territories at extreme risk. And if we have a look at a map of the country, we can see that the colour red dominates the landscape here in Spain. Only 2 areas where there is a medium risk, Galicia and the Canary Islands, and in Murcia and the Balearic Islands, the risk level there is high but not extreme. Now, we just saw that Spain has reached the terrible figure of more than 40,000 deaths during this pandemic, and we can see here that Andalusia, Murcia and Asturias are reporting more deaths daily than during the first wave. Also, Ceuta and Melilla exceed the daily average of deaths, and Aragon has an equal amount. The underreporting in March and April and the delays in the health information system make comparisons difficult. Now, we all know that Madrid is reporting quite positive data if you compare it to some of the other places around Spain. However, the skepticism about the data coming out of Madrid is growing. We saw the other day that Catalonia questioned the figures coming out of Madrid, and today El País newspaper put out the headline, "What's really behind Madrid's improved coronavirus figures?" Experts warn that the data being reported may not accurately represent the real situation, as changes in testing methods are affecting the numbers. The Premier of Madrid, Isabel Díaz Ayuso of the Conservative Popular Party, the PP, argues that the region's coronavirus restrictions, namely the surgical perimeter lockdown of basic healthcare areas, are working. But 3 experts who analysed the data in Madrid believe that this statement does not completely represent the reality on the ground. According to these experts, there is not enough information to conclude that the region's measures have been effective. The Madrid government likes to use the 14-day cumulative number of cases per 100,000 inhabitants to show that contagions in the region are on a downward trend. On September the 30th, the figure in Madrid stood at 735. By November the 10th, it had fallen to 339. But experts warn that this could be due to the introduction of antigen tests, which take less time to process than a PCR, but are less sensitive to detecting the virus. Another problem is that the tests, 5 million of which were bought by the Madrid government, were used in mass testing campaigns, which is precisely the context in which they are not recommended. So the Madrid miracle is starting to be questioned, and some experts there pointing out that perhaps it's due to the way that the testing is being carried out in the Madrid community. So we'll see how this story develops in coming weeks and months. Now let's have a look at some of the comments from recent videos. First one here from Philip. This RNA vaccine is new technology, so I'll not be one of the first to try it. Whatever anyone says, I'll wait for the tried and trusted. Yeah, Philip, thanks for the comment. I'm sure that there are lots of people in the same situation as you. Lots of people would agree with what you have just said there. They would prefer to wait for the tried and trusted version rather than be the guinea pigs, let's say, for lack of a better term, the ones that are going to be vaccinated first with this new vaccine. And I don't want to talk too much about vaccines because I know what will happen in the comment section if I do, but all I'll say is that I have been speaking to a few people in recent times, all of the people that I talk to in Spain here in my telephone classes, and a lot of them have the same opinion as you. One here from Stevo. I think the problem for the police is the paperwork is much longer when dealing with foreign tourists in a foreign registered vehicle. I got stopped in Romania during a regular police check, and once they found out I was British, they didn't want to know and just waved me through. Yes, Stevo, thanks for the comment and good point. Maybe it is too much of a hassle for the police to deal with foreign people, to deal with foreign license plates, and of course the language barrier. It might be, as you said, just easier to wave them through rather than stop them and get into the bureaucratic process of handing out fines. And of course the most likely scenario is that a lot of people that are down here on holidays won't pay the fines anyway unless they're on the spot. And I'm not really sure if that's the case, whether they are on the spot fines or whether there's more to it. So that could be one of the reasons. And as I said yesterday, this whole matter seems a bit strange. It doesn't really seem fair that people here in Spain, residents here in Spain, aren't allowed to go anywhere, especially down there in Andalusia. People aren't allowed to leave their local municipality, yet people are allowed to come to Spain in a camper van or a motorhome and travel freely around the country. It doesn't really seem to make sense, at least for me. One here from Alan. Thanks again. I'm able to gain a great deal of insight into how it is in Spain by following your vlogs. Increasingly, it appears to be an amalgamation of different nations. Yeah, Alan, thanks for the comment. It's true. Spain is an amalgamation of different nations. There are lots of cultural differences, lots of variety around the country. We mentioned yesterday the linguistic differences, for example, in places like Catalonia, Balearic Islands, Galicia, Valencian community as well. In the Basque Country as well, there are lots of people still around the country fighting to make sure that this cultural diversity remains. There are still some people around the country that would prefer a more homogeneous Spain. That's obviously what some people tried to do in the past. They tried to get rid of that diversity, and in some sectors of the society, these thoughts remain. But for me, it's clear that the secret to this country is its diversity, and it's one of the things that I like the most about Spain. One here from David. Those who get hurt economically in Spain and beyond this pandemic will be the young generations for years to come. Yeah, David, thanks for the comment. And you're right, Spain's youth and youth around the world will be suffering the consequences of this pandemic and the crisis for years to come. Here in Spain back in 2008, 2009, 2010, that crisis also smashed younger generations. Lots of people had to leave the country in order to find a job. I don't know how many people have managed to come back. And I think that this crisis and the upcoming economic problems that we're going to have in this country will force people to move to other countries to look for work as well. It's all going to depend, of course, on how long it takes the economy to recover, but we could be looking at a generation in Spain that is worse off than the previous one, and I don't think that's happened for a while. One here from Lisa. I did not know that word pernoctar, so thank you. Yeah, thanks for the comment, Lisa. I mentioned that word in yesterday's video. Pernoctar, it means to stay the night, to spend the night somewhere. Normally when you're camping or you're spending the night in another city, you can see this word. It's not a common word. A lot of people would prefer to use the expression, as I said yesterday, pasar la noche, but apparently it's quite common to see this word in car parks, especially where people are tempted to stop for the night, maybe close to the beach or in national parks. But as I said, it's not a very common word, at least not for me. But one of the objectives of this channel is to help people navigate through the difficulties of the Spanish language. So I'll look to put more words like this in videos in the future. And finally, one here from Jennifer. You must go to the Canaries. They are so different. Yeah, Jennifer, thanks for the comment. I mentioned the other day that I have never been to the Canary Islands. I've spoken to lots of people and met lots of people over the years who are from the Canary Islands, and they always tell me how fantastic the Canary Islands are. I'm looking forward to getting there one day. I saw the other day that the government is trying to encourage people to come and live in the Canary Islands if they can work remotely. That is my situation, so I'm very tempted and I might take them up on that offer. It just depends whether I can convince the other members of the family to come with me. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.